Hello, hello, and welcome to Wednesday, March 14th.
Man, March 14th already. You know, I remember when we were talking about like, oh, hey, it's January, it's the new year. Oh, hey, it's, February, woo! And now all of a sudden it's like, oh, shit, St. Patrick's Day is almost upon us.
Oh, yeah. When is that? Is that the 17th?
I don't, to be honest with you, I don't really follow it too much. I just hear about it afterward, like, oh, yeah, it's St. Patrick's Day, you're not wearing your green, or, oh, man, I, went to the bar last night. I regret nothing, or everything, depending, so.
I regret nothing, or everything.
Or everything. Hey, and welcome everyone in chat, by the way. Vargalas Vet, thank you so much for hosting us and for hanging out with us today. And RX Mongo, as always, thank you so much for being here. And hello, Nurum Lena, how's it going?
Hello, hello, and welcome. Thank you. We're trying something different, something colorful and awesome for those of you that are listening on Podbean. We have a little bit of a different background on our Twitch, so come on, check us out. Twitch.tv/MindMineTV. Check us out. Check us out our new background.
That's right, yeah. Every Wednesday, of course, we go live on Twitch.tv, and you can be a part of the audience. Share your thoughts, your ideas, your questions directly in chat with us and, really have a conversation. Otherwise, of course, like always, every Monday after, we release each of these as a podcast, both on Podbean as well as iTunes or any other podcast aggregator that you use. So feel free, if you don't follow Twitch or, you can't make it at the time, which is 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, at least make sure to check us out and subscribe or follow wherever you're at for that podcast aggregator, and that way you can be notified whenever it becomes live, so that way you can jump into these topics that we have going on every single week.
Every single week we talk about something cool.
Exactly, and I love it. I love the fact that people in chat get so excited about it, and they'll go in depth and have these philosophical conversations and discussions. And what I love too is the fact that no one is like going after each other. There can be people that disagree with some of the topics, or not so much the topics, but like what some people believe in for those topics. But no one's ever like cutthroat going after each other. Like, oh, well, these are, my points of discussion. Oh, well, that's a good point, but these are my points of discussion. And that is really what we're trying to do, is get that discussion going, and going in a way that is constructive, that isn't diminishing people or isn't going after another person, but really trying to understand all the different perspectives involved, because that's important as well. Even if maybe they're not a correct perspective, if you believe that this, that perspective is not correct with what I believe in, at least it's important to understand where they're coming from, so that way if you are in the right, you can say, oh, well, these are your points you brought up, but this is why that doesn't work. And I think that's much more powerful than you're stupid. That argument never works. People try it online all the time. You're stupid. That doesn't work.
Period.
Whatever.
End of story.
You move on with life. Whatever. People in chat are like, I'll cut you, man. Yeah.
We have such a wonderful, kind, generous chat. But we do, though, for realsies.
No, we have an awesome audience here today and every day. So we're really appreciative of everyone who tunes in and listens to us or watches us, or even on YouTube, too, something I forgot to mention. We've just started putting up full episodes of our talk show up on YouTube, too. So if you miss a part of it or all of it, you can always feel free to also check us out on YouTube as well. And we'll put the link in the chat. But then that way, too, you can always catch up and also see us visually and what we're talking about, some of the images that we show for each of the topics that we talk about.
Indeed.
So, and with today, we have a special tech theme, which we're really excited about. We originally were supposed to have a guest on here, but we haven't heard back from him. So we hope, everything's okay with him. We know that life does come up and crazy stuff does happen. So we do wish him the best of luck. Hopefully everything is going well for him. And so we're going to be diving into this tech theme ourselves. And we have two awesome topics to talk about here that, for many, they might not realize the importance of these topics. And for others who are in the tech industry, they definitely understand the importance of these topics. And I think they'll be very happy to hear the discussion being started here on these subjects. The first one, though, I'll go through both of them real quick, just as a quick introduction before we dive in, is, for one, specific individual who is behind PayPal and many other companies you might have heard of. Their data company has just recently developed is going to be developing a new intelligence platform for the U.S. Army. So our discussion is going to go based on, well, what are they currently using? What are the issues with it? And what is this new platform? Who are the people behind the new platform? And what are their actual intentions for grabbing this contract from the government? And then the second one is actually going to be about a specific CEO that was arrested by, of all groups, the FBI for something to do with custom Blackberries.
Oh.
But you gotta tune in and listen more to figure out what's exactly going on.
And Vargala in chat does say that this will wake up Skynet, so...
We are being watched currently, so we will behave ourselves to the best of our ability.
So if we see any time-traveling robots in the next few years, we'll know it's true. All right, so obviously, armies need accurate intelligence reporting in order to do their jobs, right? In order to act on that particular intelligence and figure out what to do next. So the U.S. Army currently is using a system called Distributed Common Ground System, or DCGS for short. And they've been using this particular platform to interpret intelligence from a variety of platforms, both on planet and off planet, actually, in order to inform their next course of action. And Peter Thiel's data mining company, which is called Palantir Technologies, is actually going to be building a new intelligence platform for the U.S. Army meant to replace the existing DCGS. Now, they're going to work with defense contractor Raytheon to create this platform for a cool $876 million US dollars.
Hey, you got that in my back pocket.
Right? Yeah, I just take that out, but like, sure, no problem.
I'm actually sitting at an angle. You just can't tell because I adjusted the camera. But yeah, all that money is in my back pocket right now.
And it's going to take a few years, about a decade or so, to really build it, create it, and test it and all that good stuff. $876 million, not too bad when you spread it out, when you amortize that over 10 years, as it were.
Well, and especially if you look at the total budget that gets sent to the military in the first place, which is billions of dollars. They actually receive the most money out of any other sector of the government right now in the U.S.
That's true. So this is just pocket change.
Yeah.
It's pocket change. Now, you might be thinking, why do they need an upgrade? Right? Well, battlefields are complicated areas, everybody, okay? The military needs to be able to analyze all the disparate sources of data that they have, right? From reconnaissance to just military intelligence, spies, and other things. And they need to synthesize that into useful information that their commanders can act on, right? So the DCGS system, I think that's redundant because yes, this system, has been in use since the mid-1990s. And hasn't quite kept up with the new technology, like drones or the new aircraft that they have in use. So soldiers have actually been complaining that it isn't as effective. Now, I just want to repeat again that it's been in the use since the mid-1990s. Are you still using software from the 1990s?
Yeah, that's pretty scary. That's like, okay, yeah, I still use Windows NT or 93 or no, that doesn't happen. Our smartphones are more up to date than what the military is using currently. That's insane.
It's time for an upgrade. So I get it. Like, I totally get it, right? Now, I also wanted to point out that, Palantir Technologies and the U.S. Army isn't quite the love story that you might imagine. So Palantir was founded in 2004 by Thiel and 4 others, but Thiel is the largest shareholder, so in theory, he founded it by himself a little bit. But so they've had their eye on the battlefield intelligence systems for quite some time. Palantir already holds a number of contracts with various government agencies, military branches, and municipal governments to already collect data for law enforcement or disaster recovery purposes. For example, Palantir Gotham is used by counterterrorism analysts at offices in the U.S. intelligence community and the United States Department of Defense. And they have fraud investigators at the Recovery, Accountability, and Transparency Board that use it, cyber analysts at Information Warfare Monitor, and so on and so forth. So Palantir's already got its hands in the government a little bit, if you will. But
that sounds a little dirty. Did they at least take them out to dinner, for God's sake?
I should hope so. At the millions of dollars that probably come into their pockets, you'd think a nice steak dinner would be in order. So then in 2015, when the military began to look for contractors to help upgrade their aging DCGS, Palantir actually sued the Army. Yes, they actually sued the U.S. Army, saying that it had not been considered as a potential contractor.
Which gets me, because it's like, you don't have the right. It doesn't matter. Like, they consider who they want to consider. Right. They will reach out to who they want to reach out to. You're already working with them anyway for other contracts. Like, get over yourself. But, of course, the intelligence, the private intelligence industry is super competitive. There aren't many that are, there aren't that many within that field. So you want to be top dog. So it makes sense that, they're frustrated, but to sue them is just freaking outlandish. And that can show, again, and we'll get more into this, about how corrupt our system is in the sense of businesses taking over power from our own government even, or trying to.
Right, because a judge actually obviously ruled in Palantir's favor in 2016, allowing the company to bid for the project, and now they clearly won the bid. And for those of you who can't see me, my eye is twitching a little bit. Because it's like, this all seems a little bit shady, just a little bit. Also, as a side note, the company also successfully sued the U.S. Navy in 2017 over its procurement processes. So this company is sort of like coming in, throwing shade.
Well, and so that just shows right there, they really do have the best interest of our Army, Navy, military. They really have the best interest at heart, and that they really care about the people that this military and Army and whatnot are protecting, which is us. Well, at least supposedly, right? So, yeah, they really show that that's all sarcasm and bullshit, by the way. Just throwing that out there for those that can't see my face or can't tell.
Yeah, and let's chat about Thiel for a moment, since we're talking about his company. Now, Peter Thiel was a co-founder of PayPal.
Ooh, PayPal, lovely.
And Facebook's first outside investor. So he knows a thing about a thing or two.
Yeah, of course. This is also the guy, by the way, to not interrupt you, this is also the guy that helped Hulk Hogan sue Gawker and put them out of business. Now, mind you, I'm not supporting Gawker because they did some really, shitty articles and stuff like that, and really just tried to dig up as much trash on people as possible. But again, Gawker, or I should say Thiel, is known for just going after anyone with a lawsuit, very similar to certain people who are now president. They will just sue anyone if they don't get their own way. So of course, Thiel tried suing Gawker many times, also then helped Hulk Hogan, which then of course led to Gawker's demise. So just keep that in mind as well. Because, by the way, so Peter Thiel is gay. No hiding that or anything like that. He's come out and said it. But he came out and said it after Gawker released an article about that.
Oh.
So again, and that's not the discussion point, but I just want to point out that is his beef with Gawker, in case you were wondering and weren't sure, why is he going after a stupid tabloid newspaper? That would be why.
He also labels himself as a conservative libertarian who is, quote, excessive of government, is critical of, quote, excessive government spending, like $876 million US, high debt levels, and foreign wars.
But yet, his systems are helping support the intelligence for foreign wars.
And excessive government spending. But and another surprise, because it just keeps on coming. So he also has a Breakout Labs and Thiel Fellowship funds. And those funds, they go into nonprofit research into artificial intelligence, life extension, and seasteading, which is something that I learned recently. And what is seasteading? Seasteading, might you ask? It's the concept of creating permanent dwellings at sea, called seasteads, which is outside the territory claimed by any government. Okay, so the guy clearly hates government spending, all of that good stuff, doesn't want government really involved in his daily and business affairs. So his company is suing the U.S. Army and the U.S. Navy because they don't want to use him? Mind blown.
Yeah, it doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense besides money, right? He knows he can get a lot of money and do a lot of other projects that he wants to do, such as a seasteading and everything else, where again, the wealthy control their own properties on different islands. They don't have a government over them, so they don't have to pay taxes. It can be like their own personal tax haven, basically. Everything is there, so they don't owe anyone anything. And they can purchase whatever they want, do exactly whatever they want. Yeah, and as Vargala said, BioShock, anyone? If you've ever played the video game, this is... Do you want BioShock? This is how BioShock starts. Okay, folks?
What is the story of BioShock? I don't actually...
A wealthy person basically creates this world underneath the water in the ocean, and he controls everything. I mean, that's the rough gist of it, but he tries to create, like, utopia.
Oh, my goodness.
And so that's what these individuals, in a way, are kind of doing. And again, this is only for the wealthy. And, you know, it's not too surprising in the way of that a libertarian wants to take away things from the government and give it to more privatized corporations, because that's what libertarians want. That's one of their core things, is that we want to take more off the plate of the U.S. Government and have private industry take care of it. So that's nothing new. But the fact that he is, you know, has these kind of theories and philosophies against what some of the government does, and yet he's trying to get money from them and work for them. I'm not sure who's more stupid here. The ones who are accepting it, then again, they have their hands tied behind their back because they're going to get sued and evidently lose, or the person who keeps trying to go for the money. It's interesting. It's convoluted, and you can I think you can easily go to one side or the other on this, but...
Right. It is curious. What are the true motives behind all of this?
Yeah, and you know, something else that's interesting too, by the way, is the fact that DCGS was actually being supported by IBM and many other companies, saying that, no, this system works well and it isn't as good as the Palantir system. As, you know, back in 2012, actually, IBM's VP of Governmental Affairs said that DCGS was far better than what Palantir could offer. Now, the question is, you know, is that still true? It's been several years now. Most people say DCGS, which is the information system. Basically what it is, it's a system that takes all the information being collected from all these resources, puts it together, and creates basically like a report for you to tell what is actually happening, right? Like we talked about this for the Washington Post, actually, where they start implementing AI to collect all the information from reporters and piece it together into articles that could then be given to us, the consumer. And so this is kind of a similar system of just bringing all these resources of information together into one hub.
It's like a really, really fancy Excel spreadsheet, guys.
Yeah, super fancy.
Super fancy.
Super $1 million Excel spreadsheet fancy.
Yeah, with like drop downs and
Yeah, like, you know, like a couple different options for your font, some, you know, certain, you know, adjustments in size for different boxes. It's super clean and
There's probably
flashy.
pivot tables and stuff like that. Yeah.
Now we're talking.
Graphs.
Yeah. I just want to lay up in there. So now the other thing though with Peter Thiel is, you know, what's interesting is that, so the government and so many companies have been pushing DCGS probably because it also benefited them in some way, right? I wouldn't doubt it. But the thing with Peter Thiel is that he's been trying to get this contract since even before 2012, but really 2012 is when he started pushing getting the contract for the for this government, for the intelligence for the government, I should say. There we go. And what's interesting is that he, as of, I would say, during the main election, the primaries between Hillary Clinton and Trump, he came out and became a fervent Trump supporter, even though he's libertarian. So he didn't go for Gary Johnson. He went straight for Trump. And some people went, interesting, but I guess not too terribly surprising. Okay. And then suddenly he gives $125 million donation to the Trump Fund and outwardly spoke for him as well at many different conventions and what have you, and events. And now all of a sudden, 6 years later, after his initial talks with the government to get Palantir in, somehow he got the deal now that Donald Trump is president. Interesting how that sort of works out as well. Again, no, there's no direct damnation saying, oh, well, he paid his way to get this contract. Again, yeah, no one's going to say that, right? But you follow the money and you look at the string of events from 2012 with Palantir all the way up till today, till right now, when now they have that agreement signed. It seems a bit shady. It seems a bit interesting that all of a sudden has just suddenly magically worked out for Palantir after years upon years of backlash against Palantir saying, no, they don't have that great of a system. It's not where it should be. Now, people do say, though, that DCGS is a hell of a lot more expensive and that it's clunky and that it takes months to train people in. Whereas Palantir at least is saying that, well, no, ours is more browser-based, it's Java, it's much quicker, smoother, easier to train on, and it's cheaper.
Java,
wow.
You can't get that on the iPhone.
I think they actually changed it now. I'm not sure. I don't use
they?
iPhone, but for the longest time, they couldn't use Java. So it's been some craziness. It's been some craziness. But yeah, it's interesting to hear this, right? To kind of follow the trail of like they couldn't get the contract. All of a sudden they support the next president, they pay a bunch of money, and they get the contract. Again, though, it could be that Palantir has just improved. They've been around for years. But it's good to know both sides, right? It's good to know exactly what the heck is happening here. And what could be the real foundation for this agreement, which can be a pretty hefty agreement overall for us, especially when, we can't get clean water in Flint, Michigan, or in Ohio or Indiana. And, education systems are disappearing. And, we're seeing cuts in fundings to the arts and every other thing you can think of, education and whatnot. But yet the military keeps getting more funding. And even this year, actually, Trump signed on to increase the budget that the military's already been getting. And so, more money is going to that, which means more money will go into, of course, the pocket of Palantir.
Right. And all of the, because there's also privatized intelligence. There's an article that came out in 2016 that talked about how privatized intelligence was basically dominated by 5 core companies. None of them, of course, at this point being Palantir or Raytheon. So there's even other companies out there that...
Oh, yeah, like Booz Allen is one of the top ones, for instance.
Right.
Great, funny name, right? Oh, Allen? Yeah, he's a booze hound. That's Boozy Allen over there in the corner. He's the CEO.
Yeah, and so it would make sense, too, that these two companies now would work together to try to grab a little bit more control from that, try to get a share of that military spending pie, as it were. Because
I don't know if we mentioned this or not. I can't remember if we'd said this, but Raytheon is working with Palantir on this intelligence system. So, Of course, because Palantir or Raytheon aren't the big players within the private intelligence industry, boom, they work together. They help work out this system. And all of a sudden, now they're one of the top companies within that industry, because there's only 5 core companies, as you were mentioning. And the other thing, though, is that Raytheon is like one of the top weapons manufacturers for the U.S. Army. And so now they're trying to get into intelligence, and then what else? And I do think that is problematic. As the article mentioned that you were talking about, do we really want to have 5 or less players in this industry giving us our information? Because in the end, one is if something happens and that company screws up, we don't really have anywhere else to go, right? Like there's not a lot of other options. And number 2 is the fact that we're trusting a small group of businesses, of private businesses, to give us proper information, hoping that they won't give us information that benefits them, right?
Yeah.
And that's scary. That really is scary because we already know that for businesses, it's about money. It's about the bottom line. And I'm not saying that negatively, but because they've got to exist too, right? And cash flow is the lifeblood of a business. It just is. But then you have to think about, are they really going to look at the people that you're trying to save or trying to protect with the military or with any other agency? Or are they going to look at, again, well, this makes us more money, so we can give this information, but maybe not other information?
Yeah, and I wonder, too, how easy is it to manipulate some of this information, right? Like, if you've got private companies creating something for the government, they probably have ways to, backdoors or something, right? Where they can kind of either glean the same information or be able to be used in a bad way, right? So that's also kind of scary to think about in some ways, because private companies, right, their bottom line is we want to make money, right? They're going to sell all their stuff to whoever pays the most money, right? So what's stopping them, let's say, from getting some of that data and selling it to the highest bidder, whether or not that's the U.S. government or not?
Well, and that's fair too. Again, depending on the contract that they sign and all that, but it's a very real thing, because if you look at weapons manufacturers, for instance, many of them have been notorious for selling weapons to both sides of any insurgency or upheaval or war. There have been plenty of times where you could see the same manufacturer's weapons on either side, and it was because it was sold to them. It wasn't just because someone from, the enemy's side found a gun and went, oh, cool, and started using it. No, it was sold to them and given to them. And so, you have to wonder, because with these agencies, with these companies, they make money off of war. If there is no war, they don't make money. How do they continue making their weapons? How do they continue justifying putting in all this tech and research into these weapons if it isn't there? Right? It's just like when we were talking about, like, the gun industry, for instance, in last week, where we're talking about, like, the gun industry relies on things like hunting or also tragic events to sell more guns. There's always a peak in gun sales after that. And is anyone any more protected? Survey says no.
Survey says no. I have to say, too, that hearing about how the soldiers have been complaining about this software, this platform, and potentially not getting either the most accurate information or maybe in a timely manner, or not being able to synthesize it correctly, et cetera, et cetera. Basically, it's not effective. Now, we've all experienced this at work, right? Mm-hmm. In some form or fashion. We all use some piece of software or a particular system or a process that isn't necessarily the most efficient, right? And you find workarounds, and you spend extra time trying to make sure that it works, and you've got other documents that help you with your workarounds and all the other stuff, and it just takes longer, more time to get to the data that you want and get the information that you need. But somehow you do it, and then you keep going on. Obviously, when it comes to military intelligence, I would imagine that you don't have the luxury of doing that, and when it gets done is when it gets done, right? Because things move fast, right? They move quickly.
Right.
When you're looking at real-time strategy, not just a game, everyone, right? Then you need to actually be able to properly interpret what's happening in real time and make decisions and inform your superiors and provide recommendations and right? So for the fact that they've been using a system that hasn't been necessarily working as well, or maybe it's been patched here and there for so long, that makes me question also, what has our military been doing that maybe wasn't right?
Right.
Because they didn't have the right information, or they didn't interpret the right information in the correct way. Or who is interpreting the information, and why are we letting a system do it anyways, to some degree? AI writing our news articles from a template is one thing. Having a system put together something for you and say, this is the result, okay, now go bomb these people, is another thing, right?
Exactly, because you can retract an article from a newspaper. You can't retract a bomb. I mean, that's just the point of it, right? You can't retract and just say, oh, hey, by the way, you know how we bombed you? We'll take that back. Everything will be fine, right? All the buildings will rebuild themselves. The lives lost will be, renewed. Everything will be fine. No, that shit doesn't happen. If you raid a village or a city because of information given to you, that stuff just doesn't get retracted or disappear, like you were saying, like an article does.
Right. And again, these are all... They feel a little bit like I'm spewing some sort of conspiracy theory and like paranoia, and I'm not trying to do that, but it's just, it's interesting, I think, sometimes to look at, play devil's advocate and kind of look at the other side of it.
Right.
And I get it. If you're the U.S. Army, I can't even imagine all the different sources of information that you would have to look at in order to make a decision as like a commander or a general or something like that, right? And you're depending so heavily on the people that you oversee to get the right information to you, and that you're well kept in the loop, right?
Right.
So obviously intelligence analysts need some help too. It's not like they can just, take a phone call from from someone currently flying overhead somewhere, right? Like they need other ways to interpret all the data. And as it was mentioned, there's new drones, there's new aircraft, there's new this, there's more military, there's more things that are happening, all of this good stuff. So it's hard, and I get that. I get that you need something to help you out with that. But it's also kind of scary to be so reliant on one centralized hub of information that is aging, that doesn't take into account everything. Because I see it, in the variety of jobs that I've held. When a system doesn't work effectively, it screws shit up. It screws shit up. Period. End of story, So it's funny to think about that. Oh yeah, this apparently also happens at, the government level, at military level, at, the kinds of things where I never thought about before, I just figured, oh, well, yeah, I'm business, whatever, this and that. But no, when there's like lives at stake and weapons and other shit, it's insane. I always joke with some of our clients, like I'm like, hey, this isn't life or death, like this can wait like an extra day, that's not true with some of these other things. That is life and death. Mm-hmm. and they can't. So it's it's interesting. Also, as a fun fact here for everybody, as I bring the mood down, the company Palantir Technologies actually gets its name from the Lord of the Rings. Do you know that? That's kind of cool. A Palantir is an object that can see into the future.
Oh, nice.
I thought that was a fun fact.
Well, and real quick, too, to go back, there's an article from The Nation where we pulled that information about the 5 companies that have the lion's share of contractors in the U.S. government. And two of the core things I really like that I want to actually read word for word here, because I think it's so well put, is that this article says, so here's the bottom line. Not only has intelligence been privatized to an unimaginable degree, and this was as of 2016, but an unprecedented consolidation of corporate power inside U.S. intelligence has left the country dangerously dependent on a handful of companies for its spying and surveillance needs. It's time for Congress and the media to finally recognize spying as a joint venture between the security state and the private sector. In the end, intelligence is a public resource between the is a joint venture between the security state and the private sector. In the end, intelligence is a public resource that deserves to be controlled by the people and for the people, and not benefit a small group of corporations and the oligarchs they've spawned. And I think that is a great way to word it. Again, it should be about the people being protected. It should be about the overall goals of the military, for the people, and not just what benefits these, small group of companies. And so it does raise up, a big concern about what is their actual end goal. And I'll share the link also to the Nation article in chat as well, so you all have it. But yeah, so it's interesting to see. And again, we're not saying there is anything dark about this, but we just wanted to bring to light that there are some shady backgrounds to Peter Thiel. There are some interesting things that have happened since 2012 to get Palantir into this sort of contractual power with the government, and it just so happens to really be beneficial to someone who doesn't even believe in supposedly what they're doing in the first place, or what their client does in the first place. And so it's just, there's a lot of gray area to this. This is important to understand this, especially as we move forward and we start to learn more things about what's happening in our military, what's happening with these businesses, and so forth.
Looking into the future.
That's right.
With our Palantir.
With our Palantir. Yeah, so I mean, technology will take us many different places, and it's up to those that create the technology and enforce it and use it. So the core of it then is, where will these people take us all? And we need to be aware of it and of all the different options, so that way we know how to face it when things change.
And I always find it interesting too when I'm a big fan of Wikipedia, but I love when I look into the history of some of the people, some of the key players in all of the stuff that's happening in our world, and you look at their history and you look at what they've been doing and what they're saying and what they're quoted as saying, what the interviews are, that they give, and you watch their videos and all this other stuff, and you get a better understanding of not only, these companies that seem to be faceless doing things, but it's the people that are running these companies and the people that are setting things in motion, and learning about their history is always fascinating, and I think it provides such an interesting texture to what's happening, which is part of the reason, we wanted to talk a little bit about Thiel and just tell you a little bit about him, because Palantir Technologies isn't this faceless company, right? It's run by people. Like somebody else is pushing that cart forward. And I always like to tell people, you see something happening in the news, get a little bit more informed on all of the different things that you can, if you're interested in really truly understanding what's happening. A lot of the times too, the news reports things in a kind of boxed sort of manner, right? It's impossible for them to have an article that's bajillions of thousands of words long, right? First of all, no one's going to read that because we have the attention span of 10 seconds. But there's just so much more happening in the background, more so than just what the news is reporting, especially nowadays. But in general, it's fascinating. It's fascinating to learn all that. And I was going to say too, the music is very, very hyped right there.
Well, and another thing that just kind of hits my mind too is the fact that Peter Thiel, you had mentioned, is a pretty large investor in Facebook. It was the first one when they went public to invest in Facebook. And of course, Facebook is also notorious for data mining and taking as much information as possible. Oh, yeah. Though again, we willingly give it to him. It's called our profile. But he's, with his involvement there, that makes you wonder about how much data he's actually getting. Because data now, so many tech articles have come out about how, and actually economic articles about how data is really like the new monetary unit. Yeah, the dollar's nice, but if you have data, you have ultimate power, because you know everything that's going on, and people want that data and will purchase it, trade for it, do whatever they can for said data. And so it's actually even more worrisome to know that not only does Peter Thiel have this company, which has been working for other businesses, but now also the government getting all of this data, not only nationally, but internationally. And then now he's also working with Facebook, which then could give him access to even more data, both nationally and internationally, through Facebook. Like, it just seems insane. So not only is he going to have a ton of information on businesses, on organizations and groups and what have you, but also the individual. And it seems like it's all power plays, but can I really say that? No, because I don't know. I'm not him, right? But it's just interesting, and it's a little concerning, because should someone have all that information at their beck and call? I say no, personally.
Fun fact number 2, speaking of data mining, there's about 100 jobs right now in California, in Southern California, that are all related to data science, aka data mining. data scientist, artificial intelligence, SAS data analyst, data mining, statistical data mining analyst, staff data scientist, data mining engineer, head of data science, and so on and so forth. So, holy shit. Why is data mining a thing? I mean, when did it become such a thing that we're all just like, why do you need to do it? What, to get more products out there?
Oh, that's exactly it. You know, you want to see purchasing behaviors. You want to see what people tend to like and dislike, so that way you show them what they technically want to see, and you benefit from it, right? Whether you're an advertiser, you want to show them the ads that work, so that way they click, so that way you get paid. Or if you're a company, people are now purchasing your items because they see it right in front of them. I mean, that's really the core of it, is that businesses want data to sell to you, because they said, well, screw trying to be humanistic in many respects and just connect to you on a human level. We want to make more money. You know, we need to make more profit. And, you know, our CEO and investors want more money. So, okay, let's pull more money. Let's really get, you know, to the psychology of who you are, and by getting all this data based off of what you've done online.
It's so scary.
That
This thing is a thing.
Well, and we mentioned this a couple weeks back, but for months now, many people don't realize it's been legal now. They passed a bill saying that basically, that a bill went through that okayed it for people to sell your history, your browsing history.
Oh, yes, that's right. So an incognito mode does not prevent your porn tabs from showing, by the way, FYI.
Yeah, so if you went and purchased something on Amazon, or if you went to, let's say, some pharmaceutical company online, or whatever it is, all that is tracked and can be sold. So even if you have, you know, all these different supposed widgets and add-ons and everything else, to try to protect your privacy, a lot of times, whatever browser you're using or whatever else can still gather that information and legally has the right to sell it. And, you know, I don't know. People are so concerned about net neutrality, which they absolutely should be, because not only can they sell your browsing data, but now, you know, they can control what you see online, is ridiculous. But I think we should have been worked up a lot sooner about them selling our browsing data too. Because, again, that's more information to these individuals. They can make more money now legally. It's not like a black market of information. And so, again, it only negatively impacts us for the most part. And some people can say, well, you know, I have the will to look at an ad and go, it's an ad, I don't need it. But not everyone is like that. Some people are very impulsive or very emotional. And if they get the right emotional sort of spark from something, some sort of ad or something like that, they're just going to gravitate toward it. And that's more detrimental than it is beneficial. And what these companies don't understand is that if you drain and suck all the money out of these people because of all your data mining that you're doing, guess what? They're not going to have any money to give to you. And that's the whole thing. And then you're going to lose your client base. It just doesn't make any sense. The whole kind of hierarchy system that they have in their heads just does not make any sense.
I wonder if there's a Black Mirror episode on the dangers of data mining or something, or like, you know, taking it to an extreme. Have you seen Black Mirror, by the way? No,
I've seen little bits and pieces, little clips online, but I get it though. It's like a Twilight Zone sort of, but to an extreme in a way.
And usually it's about the way that technology can, if left unchecked, can take us down a terrible, terrible path in a variety of different ways.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But I wonder if they have a data mining type.
I mean, data mining to a point is fascinating in the sense of we do learn more about who we are as people.
Yeah.
You know, in what our habits are and stuff like that. But, you know, when you assume that you have your own privacy and then that gets stripped away from you, it's disconcerting. You know, especially because technically speaking, even though the internet is open, right, at least right now, but the whole thing is that you're in your own private home, so you feel like, even though this may not be true, but you feel like, oh, well, I'm protected, I'm on point, and, I feel like I'm in the right to, like, just do what I want to do here. Not realizing, but technically speaking, having that internet connection is like having your front door open, so therefore you kind of lose that that right of privacy in a way, based on our laws and other systems. And actually, what's interesting, talking about privacy too, it goes to our next topic, that, when you first read the headline, you go, WTF? That's what I saw. And I'm like, what in the hell's going on here? So evidently, and this is from Engadget that we get this information, but the FBI arrests CEO of companies selling custom Blackberries to gangs. More specifically, to drug gangs.
Da, da, da.
So, yeah, a little bit of a twist there. Evidently, the FBI arrested Vincent Ramos for allegedly aiding criminal organizations like drug cartels through his company Phantom Secure, a phone mod seller. The company altered BlackBerry and Android devices to disable common features like the camera and the web browser, while adding pretty good privacy, which is the name of it, for encrypted conversations. The FBI estimated that there were as many as 20,000 of these handsets around the world, half of them in Australia, interesting, with others selling in countries like Cuba, Mexico, and Venezuela. According to investigators, Phantom Secure wasn't just turning a blind eye to the shady backgrounds of its customers, it was actively selling to them on purpose. Supposedly, undercover agents reported hearing Ramos say that buying one of his phones was totally fine, but that the phones were modified specifically with drug trafficking in mind. So supposedly, undercover agents actually heard Ramos say, oh no, these phones are safe, they're great to use, but we are really gearing them toward illegal activities such as drug trafficking. That's insane.
Privacy on a smartphone, though. People go crazy with that shit. And this whole idea of encrypted communication and, hiding things so you can do shady stuff. So, I mean, on the one hand, right, Phantom Secure was like, there's a niche here. Oh, nobody's in there. All right, let's go. Because they're a business, right? And what did we say the bottom line was for businesses? Money, money, money.
Well, and they'll put it too that, well, we're not the one selling the drugs. We just happen to sell devices. These are individuals. They buy the devices. They use them as they want. We have no control on how they use them.
It's like every weapon dealer's tagline ever.
Pretty much. I mean, we didn't pull the trigger.
Right. We're not killing people. We're just making really amazing, highly automated, very efficient weapons that we sell to the highest bidders, whoever they might be. We're done.
And we're done. And that's it. And usually they don't do anything because, well, you have to have intent, right? But he did supposedly say that he had the intent of giving it specifically to drug trafficking. So this is why he's specifically getting arrested by the FBI, is for that very fact. They heard the intent directly from the source and said, okay, well, this is it. You actually said it. We've got it. Done. You know what I mean? Like there's no going back on what you just said. You could have said, oh, it's great for phones, and that's it. Or like, it's a great phone to use. That's it. It's super secure. That's it. As soon as you go into, well, it's great for drug trafficking. It's a great burner phone. I'm sorry, what?
It's a great burner phone. What I want to know is, okay, so they arrested him. Okay. And like, the company's still going, right? Is the company still selling phones? It just feels like, and again, obviously the article was super short and they were just saying like, here's what happened. But what is the next step, right? What do you do at that point? Because if we were to trust what movies do, the FBI is going to strike a deal with the CEO for like information on these like shady organizations, and then they're gonna like burst in the door with like James Brolin or Josh Brolin and Emily Blunt and Benicio del Toro, and they're just gonna take them down. Yeah, I watched Sicario. What? Not quite the plot of the movie, by the way. Feel free to watch it. But, I feel like they arrested the CEO. They haven't shut down the company, as far as I know, at this point. Maybe some updates there, but and then that the phones are still out there. And this just proves potentially that another person can come now into that void and just be smarter about not getting caught.
If they haven't already been already.
Right. And I mean, one of the reasons, it was one of the, it was somebody who either defected from the cartel or was caught and probably tried to strike a deal. They're the ones that I think actually informed the FBI about Phantom Secure and all of the stuff that was happening. Mm-hmm. So it's not like Phantom Secure, had a Google ad running right there as you searched for data encryption on my phone. That was just like, oh, do you run a drug cartel? Come on down. So who knows what else is out there? Like obviously shady organizations are going to try to use the latest up-to-date technology to do anything that they need to do, and they probably have the money to pay for it as well. For example, there's, speaking of really expensive privacy smartphone things, Siren Labs actually debuted the Solarin Android phone. I'm going to show you what an image of it as well here. It's a smartphone with, quote, highly secure software, marketed for the upwardly mobile customer who demands high security. It is $16,000. $16,000.
And of course, they were hoping to get the wealthy crowd or businesses involved and stuff too. But the problem with it is that a lot of people like features, right? They like perks outside of just security because they can't play with it, they can't see it, they can't touch it. So they said this phone had a crap camera. Most of the pictures came out blurry. And the fact was it was using Android 5.1 rather than 5.5, which at the time 5.5 was already out. So it was using an old operating system as well. So it was slower, it was more sluggish. And so I think they said too, they only sold 750 of them total or something within the past year.
Yeah, it was less than 1,000 units. They still, I think, made a few, some cash monies from that, depending on what their cost of making the phone actually was. Yeah, it's so when you are a shady organization, you can afford even that kind of a price tag. Probably you probably don't want to, but. The other thing I don't really understand from a business perspective is why you'd want to get in bed with somebody like that. Because, what if you misstep, right? They could kill you. Because they're fucking shady.
Where there's a will, there's a way. If they've been getting away with this stuff for the longest time, been escaping the capture by authorities, who says they can't do something to you? Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense besides financially, of course. But the fact that you're specifically focusing in on it too is just crazy. So that's wild. And again, we're not saying encryption is bad. I think encryption can be very beneficial too.
Right.
Again, it's like who wields the sword, right? Who wields the tool? Because you can either do something great or you can do something absolutely terrible. And that's really a big point as well of it. And yeah, Beard Pone actually pointed that out and says in chat too, what I don't understand is that why they didn't use the CEO and cut a deal, install a back door, and then that way they could actually capture these people. Now, instead, what they're doing is they're capturing the CEO and making it known that his phones are a liability and thus can't actually capture the people doing the trades.
Oh, that's a good point, right? Because now you've just shouted it with a giant, large megaphone. Stop using the stuff that you bought.
Yeah.
It's compromised.
Yeah, and that's a big problem there, because if you want to stop the drug trafficking and issues like that, I mean, there are better ways to do it, but especially in this case, you don't go after the person providing them a freaking phone. That doesn't do anything. Again, they've been finding ways for years to do this, for over, decades. Same with terrorist groups, too. You could try to get rid of their technology, but they find a way of communicating with one another over long distances. So don't go after the figurehead. You see what you can do to utilize it, make a deal. It makes sense.
Yeah, and Beardpond also brought up, something that's kind of a universal truth in a way, right? It's the constant struggle on how to use security, right? It is in the eye of the beholder, as it were. It's either it can either help or it can not help, right? It's a double-edged sword. When you're given a tool, it's up to you and how you use that tool.
Right.
And I love this particular analogy. A soft sponge can be used in multiple ways, but if you shove that in someone's throat, they might just die. Yeah. And, it's hard. Like, there's so many examples in our history that don't even have to do with security, but, like the atomic bomb, like, that was great for science. It sucked for people. So there's plenty of these types of examples where, right, you take it a notch too far in one direction and you're going to get bad stuff happening. And, as new technology comes out and as new security protocols come out, like there's always going to be somebody else who will figure out a way to use it bad. Like the inventor of the World Wide Web, whose name escapes me at the moment. Let's see. It is not Al Gore, by the way, as as he sometimes used to say. Tim Berners-Lee invented the World Wide Web in 1989. He actually had an interview where he basically said, "Holy shit, I did not realize this was how people could use it to nefarious uses," right? And there's a whole list of nefarious uses that one has on the internet that one could talk about. When he invented it, he was just like, I just wanted to get people the ability to communicate and share data and information and knowledge and like real time and all this other good stuff. And he had no idea. And it's like, right, well, you look at anything can be used badly by someone, depending on what they wanted to do with it. So anytime new technology crops up, I think it's very important to, if you're the person like making it or you're the team developing something, it is hard to safeguard against it being used in a negative way, right? I mean, that's hard, and we don't expect that to necessarily happen, but you have to you still have to think about that and think about whether, will this new technology, will the pros of this new technology outweigh the cons?
Right.
In some respects. And is it worth doing it? Which is like a weird thing. It's like, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a researcher, I'm not an inventor. So that's hard to say, right? Because we're always pushing for innovation. We're always pushing for, the more knowledge, the better off we'll be. And it's like, really though? Because more technology, the more stressed we become and the more disconnected we actually become from our lives and other people and like the planet and all that other stuff. So it's fascinating because we're always pushing for more and better and this and this and that, but that also allows for massive negative influences as well, because as soon as you make something easy, right, guns versus swords, like back in the day when there were swords, people couldn't just go around in the Middle Ages massacring a lot of people with the sword. Now we've got guns, assault rifles. You can just go and pick it up wherever and go ahead, go to town. So I don't know. I think that's like
basically anything can be manipulated if you're not careful and not thinking in advance of positives versus negatives. As well as just really the main thing, and we've talked about this in the past too, is the sense of security, the sense of, okay, well, if we utilize this, what do we open ourselves up to by using said device or said system? And by understanding and by reviewing this, we can hopefully put in protections against that. The problem is, though, is that our technology advances so quickly that, unfortunately, people haven't even thought about systems for security. So what we get is a lot of issues with security, especially for things like Internet of Things or the Internet of Everything, smart devices, your smartwatches or glasses or anything like that. Like those can be easily hackable, and you can, for instance, do a DDoS attack with those and help crash a system. Now, a DDoS attack is pretty sloppy. It's like hitting a website with a hammer, basically, until it just goes down. That's really all it is. It doesn't mean it can never then come back up or anything like that. It will. But so with this, you're using all the different devices like those because they don't really have security, because businesses keep pushing, going, well, it sells and it'll make us money and all this other stuff that's going on. But then they don't think about actually the support for them. And like, how do we protect people from people getting into these devices and getting information they shouldn't? And that's the crazy thing about it. It's always going to happen that way until we slow things down a little bit. Again, technology can be great, but if we're screwing it up left and right and leaving us open to attacks and everything else, what's the point of it? It doesn't matter how much money it makes, because you could go out of business too as a business if you're putting out something that people know is a security, what do I want to say, like a security issue. Yeah, no one's going to freaking buy it. So what's the point of putting it out and rushing it out? Like the logic just it astounds me.
Well, and that's like games, right? I mean, it's just early access technology.
Oh God,
there might be some bugs, but you know the price is in full, so it's okay.
Yeah, it's all good.
We have some good comments in chat that I want to just get to. Little Nasty says, if you make a new technology, you need to hire a team of people to test it under the guidelines of. Quote, what is the worst thing you could do with this? Exactly. There's actually a group of sci-fi writers actually got together and wrote an article about how they should really be consulted when somebody's about to develop a new piece of technology, because they can sit there and come up with what is the worst that we could do with this, and kind of provide some feedback. I thought that was on point though, in terms of that, because you know, it's like with anything, when you're making something, right? You kind of only have yourself as a sounding board, right? And even if you have a team that's kind of working on the same thing, you're basically each other's soundboard. And after a while, you may even have the same thoughts about something. So bringing in somebody fresh with new eyes, especially when you're looking at somebody who is a writer of sci-fi, right? Like your kind of job is to think of like what could happen. Definitely, you know, utilize people like that and just say, hey, you know what? This is how this could be used. And maybe at that point, you can develop the technology potentially in a way that mitigates some of that future opportunity for it to be used in a vastly horrible, negative kind of manner.
Oh, yeah. Well, and talking about IoT too, Beard Paul mentions that he's, because he is a professional hacker, he works with companies, organizations, look at weaknesses, and he said he's actually hacked nuclear power plants over IoT and did a talk at DEF CON and Black Hat about it. So again, it's very real, and it's not just like getting your information or, you know, taking down Twitter for a day and making you upset about it, but it legitimately has major impacts on nuclear power plants, for instance, and other major systems that should be ideally being secured by either large companies that should have the right security on them or the government. So that is pretty damn scary, to say the least. You know what I mean? And so we have to be careful of that. But it's also not just encryption overall. Because we talk about, you know, we've been talking about, for instance, people utilizing encryption for nefarious uses, but there's also the flip side of that. Maybe the encryption isn't being done correctly to protect the right things, right? So, for instance, there's another article that we've come across where it says that, you know, a lot of times these large companies get hacked even though they've used encryption, and most of it is because they get a false sense of security from supposedly these companies, you know, encrypting it to the top tier and everything like that, and that they're fully secured when really they're not. You know, they implemented it incorrectly and have left openings for hackers to get into. So not only is it an issue where we're looking at, oh damn, like, you know, with this encryption, people can utilize it for evil, but people are also not understanding encryption fully and not implementing it correctly, and therefore can also impact us negatively too. So they can hide their information because they know how to use encryption, and they're doing it for nefarious uses. But then at the same time, they know how to break into our encryption because it's weak and raggedy, and get what they want. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy how easily this can be manipulated from two different ways. You know, they can bust through it, but they can also utilize it and improve on it for their benefits. So it's a lot to think about. There's a lot going on with technology right now, and especially the more we push, as I mentioned, with like IoT and with trying to improve our computing systems and everything else. And now, as we mentioned in our previous article about like Palantir using or creating a new intelligence system for the military. What is that encryption going to be like? Are we going to see holes in that, or are we going to be seeing, the encryption they use for also nefarious uses? So
I also want to say that if anyone's doing oh, what are those called? Oh my goodness, when someone like takes a shot when you say a word, I feel like we've used nefarious like 100 times today, and it's it's like we've talked about in all of our past episodes, and as we've discussed today, there is no right or wrong answer to anything, and it's based on how we use the technology, how aware are we that the technology is being used, and how aware are we that we are being manipulated one way or the other. But yeah, it's fascinating when you think about human nature as well. Like, why are we doing nefarious things? Like what is that with people? Like, oh, I see something over there. How can I use it either in a quote unquote bad way, unquote negative way, or how can I use it just to benefit me only directly? And it's like, why do we think like that? We're a freaking social species, right? Where we want to be part of a tribe, we want to have a sense of belonging, we want to be loved and whatever accepted, and yet we also do this stupid fucking shit. And maybe this is a topic for another episode, but it's fascinating to me. Like, why is it that you find a new piece of technology or a new tool or an existing tool, and you look at it, and the types of people who look at it and they say, oh, how can I fuck somebody up? Or, oh, how can I use this for my own personal gain and fuck everybody else and all this other shit? And it's like, can we just hug our children or something when we're like when they're younger? Like, what? I don't know. It's baffling to me, because and as a writer, I can sit there and think of terrible ways for something to be used. But why though? Like, why go through with it?
Why actually implement or push through to implementation?
Yeah. I don't personally understand it, and it's fascinating.
Yeah.
It's fascinating in a terrible way.
Well, and as you put it too, it's like, the guy who created the internet in the first place just wanted people to be able to communicate through long distances and be able to ideally help the education of everyone internationally. And their communication, understanding of each other, because there was a disconnect, right? Because we had hundreds of miles or thousands of miles separating us originally. Now it's just all right in front of us. But yeah, unfortunately, we've seen some terrible things that have happened on the internet too. And it's like, yeah, people will just manipulate. I think some of it is for kicks because they just don't realize the actual impact and they just want a good laugh, not thinking. Some of it is the fact that we are in a very kind of consumeristic world. And with that, people feel like they're getting kind of downplayed or pushed to the side. And so this is their way of fighting back. But the thing is, they're so blinded by the will to want to show the people who they feel are being repressed by a thing or two, basically, or to send them a message, that they end up repressing other people as well, just like them. And so in the end, but again, that thought isn't in their head when they go to that and when they take those actions. So, and in the end, as Chad is saying, a lot of people look out, they say you got to look out for number one. And that can be very much the truth. Though, again, do you have to go about it in such a drastic, large fashion or complicated fashion? No, but, what do you, I guess, people find their own ways, and it depends on how motivated they are. So it's crazy. And I think, again, there's no right or wrong, because, again, anyone can say these tools can be used just as much for good as they can be for negative. And to strip it away, it is kind of doing a disservice in a sense. So I think it's just about putting in the security measures as best as we can, and learning from past mistakes instead of continually push out things that have these issues, that have these holes basically in them that people can access and easily hack into. So yeah, again, there's no right or wrong. It's a gray area. It's really hard to see because it's based off of where we grow, where we go. And hopefully people can hire on more individuals who are, for instance, professional hackers who will go in and test your systems and let you know what's going on. Because, again, we're seeing a lot more industries being hacked. Just within the past, 3-4 years, there have been dozens of businesses who have said, oh yeah, by the way, and I've gotten these emails too, they're like, oh, by the way, your credit card might have been leaked and also your social security number. Sorry, but we've done everything we could, so you should be good, but you might want to switch out your card number just in case.
Yeah, actually, speaking of that, randomly, I skimmed an article the other day, and so I'm gonna Tim Allen the facts here probably, but there is a bank that's offering, or a credit card company that is offering an app that actually gives you a new credit card number each time you open it to use it, but it links it to your sort of same account somewhere in the background. And when I was reading that, my first question was, okay, so they can't steal your credit card number because it always changes, but they can hack the app and sort of find the other piece of the connection puzzle on the back end that still connects you to you, and then they could somehow probably hack the app and use the app and it was just funny because they were like, oh well, here we found this technology that might be able to prevent some credit card fraud, and I'm like, yeah, but it's just new technology. Someone's gonna find a way to hack it and use again. But I appreciate the steps of that particular company that they're like, well, we're trying to make it harder, and it's like, that's true. Sometimes putting extra obstacles does deter some people, but at the same time, I think it only makes other people even that much more gung-ho to break it, right? Because it's like a competition.
Oh, yeah. Well, I know Mac has had competitions in the past where like, hey, go ahead, try to understand our super high encrypted language and see if you can break into it. And they used to have competitions all the time to see which hacker could break into it and everything, and what they could do once they hacked into it, and what they could, retrieve if they could, all this other stuff. So it is really just about, in the end, like competition too, I think, in many respects. But and also Beer Pong says, we had that in Sweden where the card number was generated on the fly. And I feel like it's not a bad idea, and it's worth a try at least, because it does mitigate more and slows the process down even more. But I feel like, yeah, they don't like it because it doesn't sound like a convenience, right? You can't just save it on Google Wallet because the card number constantly changes. So people get frustrated, like, oh, now I have to go get my card and check what it is and blah, 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 blah. Which is like, okay, yeah, I understand the whole convenience thing, but what do you want more, security or convenience? You can't say I want security if the convenience options you're picking make it even less secure. So you got to pick one or the other, folks. You can't have your cake and eat it too, sort of thing. And I think that's the point where, we have to kind of wake up to this and be like, you know what? I think I would rather choose a security. Okay, I have to take a few extra steps. Where can I make up that time somewhere else? And if it really is that big of an impact on my life, if I have to get up, spend 1 minute getting my card, seeing what the number is now, and then putting it in. So, and I think, again, as said in chat too, find the middle ground where security meets functionality. But it's not always going to be the functionality we want, but we've got to look at the security aspect too. It's got to have some sort of balance. So.
And that's key for everything in life.
That's true. Everything in life, you need a balance. And sometimes it doesn't lean more in the direction that you want. But you've got to look at the other side too and look at those benefits as well and go, actually, you know what? This works pretty well considering.
life philosophy from MindMineTV, everyone. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Whether you're listening to Podbean, whether you're watching us on YouTube, or you're joining us live every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on Twitch at twitch.tv/MindMineTV. We're really thankful and grateful for you being here and interacting with us in chat. Love the commentary, as always. Love learning all sorts of new things, as always. I feel like I just get smarter with every episode. We are variety streamers as well on Twitch, so I'm actually going to put the schedule up in chat for everybody here. But we do have Mellow Mondays, 11 a.m., where we play a chill game. We have, of course, our talk shows every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Thursdays are Wars Day Thursdays. Tomorrow we'll be playing Warframe. And then we have Fightin' Fridays, where we, at 6 p.m., where we take on...
all different kinds of combat games. So, recently we just finished up Doom. Before that, we were playing Hyper Universe, which is a free side-scrolling MOBA by Nexon. So there's a lot of great content that we have coming out for you folks. And of course, with our talk show every Wednesday, which the goal of it is really talk about left brain and right brain topics, where they intersect and how they impact our life. And, just like today, sometimes there's a lot of gray areas and there's no clear destination in sight. We just kind of have to see further where the dice roll and end. But the goal of it is to at least start discussing it and start thinking about, where could this go? How could it positively impact my life or negatively impact my life? And what should we do? How should we go from there? So, all about moving forward. And, also, again, our schedule is up there. And if you're listening on iTunes or Podbean or any other podcast aggregator, feel free to subscribe and follow, again, completely free. And that way you can support the stream, you can support the podcast, and you can also be the first notified whenever we go live or whenever an episode gets launched. Again, we love to have you listen, love to have your feedback. And if you'd like to offer suggestions on different topics, or if you'd like us to elaborate even further on a specific topic or have questions, feel free to reach out to us via our website, which is mindminepod.com, or you can catch us on Twitter or Instagram, which is at MindMineTV.
All right, so thank you for joining us, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.